Who's that? Commander Claw. Who's bad? Commander Claw. Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Brews. This is the third installation for the Wise Mothman from the Fallout set, and I have to vent real quick. If you've been keeping up with the videos, some people will say that the cards that I suggested aren't good, but I have to tell you why I suggest these cards. The reason why I suggest these cards, A, because there's new players to Magic. There's players returning to Magic that have old cards or cards from sets that aren't in use and they're just in the bulk box. And I purposely look for cards that are not on your staple deck list, okay, or on EDH Rec. And my goal in Breaking Brews is to convince you to actually try them. And I always like to say Magic is a layering game. So if you know programming, it's like programming. There's just so many different levels of syntaxes and codes that one triggers after the other. And that's how the game is played. So if you don't think about the game that way, you might have to. Oh yeah. So what we've been talking about is the Wise Mothman. I'm gonna go to the next slide, and I'm not really gonna repeat what he does. Y'all already know what he does. I'm just gonna highlight it. Yeah. So we got the Wise Mothman, super popular, super new from the Mutant Menace precon deck. You can cop them for like $1 in the singles category. But anyway, when he enters the battlefield or attacks, you get a rad counter. If you don't know what a rad counter does, it stands for radiation. And pretty much each player who has a rad counter mills that many cards equal to the rad counters they have. And if they have to exile a non-land card that they mill, and when they do, they lose one life and they lose a rad counter. And so this bad boy right here is just dropping plus one counters after those certain criteria is met. Anyway, y'all can read the card. No need to move on. Yeah. So back real quick, back to the previous episode. Check it out, man. These are some of the hot cards that I recommend. I'm telling you, layering effects. Grolnok. Yeah, Steel. Still, I know he's sitting in somebody's bulk box and he's not on EDH Rec. So if you like to save cards and play them for later, you can do that with this bad boy. Watch out, y'all. Just try it. Okay. Back to the first set of cards. Plus one counters do work. That is the theme right now for these bad boys. We have the Willbreaker. The Willbreaker for 5 mana, 3 colors, 2 blue, human wizard, 2/3. He says, whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes a target of a spell or ability you control, gain control of that creature for as long as you control the Willbreaker. So what you trying to do with this bad boy is when you have the Mothman out and somebody mills the following criteria to put plus one counters, you can put those on your opponent's creatures and you can take those creatures that your opponents control under your control because you're targeting them with a spell or ability, and the ability is the Wise Mothman's plus one counter ability. What a way to build an army for 5 mana. This is what this does. The Willbreaker. You gotta love it. It's not on EDH Red. Go find it somewhere. If you like this content, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button so you can get more Breaking Brews. I guarantee you the Willbreaker is either in a deck of yours or is in the bulk box, and you need to figure out what you need to do with it. Moving on, I just stumbled across this one in my bulk box, and I was like, "Ooh, this is a little juicy." If you want to change up the way you use a plus one counter, we have the Tenured Inkcaster from the Strixhaven set, one of my favorite sets. It is for 5 mana. It's a 2/2 vampire warlock. Ooh. It says when Inkcaster enters the battlefield, put a plus one counter on target creature. Whenever a creature you control with a plus one counter on it attacks, each opponent loses one life and you gain one life. This is a way to drain life off an attack trigger. Yeah. So when you have the Wise Mothman and you're going wide and you're putting plus one counters on creatures, every time you attack with one of those creatures, literally your opponents lose life. Each opponent loses a life, and you gain one life. Okay, this is stacking up, layering the abilities here, y'all. So like, think about it like this: you're milling somebody. Okay, you put the +1/+1 counters. Okay, you go to your attack phase. Okay, they attack your attacker's trigger off this attack trigger +1/+1. I mean lose 1 life and you gain 1 life. There's just layering effects here. This is what I'm talking about here. This is what I'm talking about. You can do this with bulk cards, budget cards, cards that you already have that you just want to use, just need to use. And the other, oh yeah, and the other thing is your play group is smart. If you keep using the staples, they know what to do. They know what to expect generally. My pod, these guys are creative. They come up with different ways to stop you, different ways to end games. And cards like this are just different ways to do it. That's the beauty of Magic. There's no generic way to win the game. It's all about what you want to do. So when I suggest cards, you don't have to use them. You don't have to love them. Maybe you want to try something new. And this is what the Breaking Brews is about. Trying something new. Anyway, moving on to the Dingus Egg. This is actually a very old card. For 4 mana, it's an artifact. It says, whenever a land is put into a graveyard from play, Dingus Egg deals 2 damage to that land's controller. Okay, so every time a player is milling and a land goes into the graveyard, they get pinged for 2 damage. That is going to stack up quick. Quick. That is going to change the direction every time a player mills and loses 2 life. If they mill 3 cards and 3 mana, that is 6 damage for no reason. This card will make you a target if you put that out there and you have mill effects going on. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. It's probably a good way to end games. Just note that you will be taking damage too. I do think it's on the expensive side, but hey, why not? Expensive side on CMC. Okay. Loot to victory. Okay, so maybe I don't know what a looting effect is. That's where you draw a card and discard a card. That is a loot effect. You see that on a bunch of red cards all day, all night. Looting effect. Draw a card, discard a card. Moving on to the last card here, y'all. Okay, the ancient one from my new favorite set, The Lost Caverns of Ixalan. It seems like yesterday when it came out. Today is what, like March 27th, 2024. Anyways, we have the ancient one for Demir, blue black. It is an 8/8 spirit god legendary creature. It has descend 8. The ancient one can attack or block unless there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard. If you don't know what the descent mechanic is that's when a permanent is in the graveyard. Uh yeah, let me read the next ability here, y'all. Tap 2 blue and a black, draw a card, then discard a card. When you discard a card this way, target player mills cards equal to its mana value. One main reason why I like this card is because it's blue and a black, right? It doesn't seem like it can be on the field early. It's literally on the field early, possibly, and you can get a draw activated ability withdrawing. So why would you want this in your deck? You would want this on your deck because you are putting usefulness to your self-mill tactics. Or maybe you have a card that needs to be in the graveyard. Or there's a card that gives you madness effect. If you haven't seen madness, is when you discard that card, you pay the madness cost. And that card is generally cheaper to cast. This way, this card is put to use. But I do like it where you make someone mill cards equal to its mana value. Don't think 3 cards, 4 cards does not hurt a player. When you make someone mill 3 or 4 cards and their deck is not milling, that's a lot, y'all. That is a lot of cards to be milling. It may not be a home run hitter, but it's kind of a utility card that can turn to a very powerful creature. 8/8. Ugh. All right. Thank y'all for watching Breaking Brews. If you love any of the content, any cards that tickled your fancy, make sure you hit that subscribe button so I can bring more Breaking Brews and ultimately quit my job and just make YouTube content all day. That would be amazing, right? I just need your help to do that. So yeah, check out the videos of all the previous Breaking Brews on the Mothman. More to come. Peace.